that, I gotta say, should never give advice ever again. Certainly not advice I would give to anyone in a similar position. I would say keep your mouth shut and your head down and see what happens. And it looks like by hiring this team of lawyers now, Jim Comey may have learned that lesson and is going to be keeping his head down and getting out of the line of fire here for a while. Especially in light of the Trump successes, which we'll talk about later on after our interview. And speaking of that interview with Josh Tolley, talking about his books and talking about, really, I don't want to say lofty concepts, but we do get up into the waxing poetically about conservatism and entrepreneurship and the feeling of building something from the ground up and how that's truly a conservative value and how that's lost on, younger generations today, the entitlement generations that we're seeing from many who self-identify as being liberal and progressive and on the left. We get into all of that with our interview with Josh Tolley, which is coming up right after the break here. I hope you stick around for it. It's a really good one, folks. Gene Baradelli behind Enemy Lines. We'll be back right after these brief words. If you're a long-time listener of the show, or maybe this is your first time listening, you can probably tell that me and the gang here, we like to have our share of fun, whether it's on or off the air. We talk about 2-drink minimum radio and no medication Wednesdays or whatever day it may be. That's why when we found the people at Less Government, More Fun, we knew it was a match made in heaven with this show. Folks, we live in a time where government is out of hand. Our founding fathers did not intend government to be all-consuming in all parts of our lives. That's why we are telling you to go to lessgovmorefun.com, check out the website, check out the swag. What the people want is less government, more fun. Pass it on, make it happen.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines Radio is all about being right. No, seriously, it is. If you ever listen to Russ Gallo or me go back and forth on some issue, we always want to make sure that we remember who said what and when we said it. That's why we go to goonrecord.com. It's a brand new social media website. Challenge people on what they believe, whether it's in politics, sports, entertainment, finance, whatever. There's a category for you at goonrecord.com. Check it out right now. Tell us, what do you stand for? It's time for you to go on record. Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air. Gene Baradelli, back behind Enemy Lines. Folks, got a great interview for you right now. Join me on the line. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show a man who's got an audience that is a little bit bigger than ours on his great radio show that's syndicated throughout all 50 states and, a couple of different countries. I think it's up to 160 countries now. 20 million some odd listeners. Like I said, he's got a little bit bigger audience than we do. And, although we don't plug the competition, he is the host of the aptly named Josh Tolley Show. Thank God you got that gig. Otherwise, I don't know who else would fill it. Josh Tolley, how you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you doing?
I'm telling you, it was dumb luck that you just happened to fall right into that role, right?
Right, happened to be named the right name, I guess.
There you go. So listen, not only are you a highly successful radio host, and you've been making the rounds nationally lately, of course you're also a best-selling author, and your book out now, which I love the title of, put a little fear into people, but I think it also gets people motivated. Quit your job or die.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that you're not a big fan of being a salaried employee.
No, not at all. That that book, and the next one, Evangelpreneur, which has been #1 on Amazon 3 times now.
Yes,
really kind of exposed the dangers of employment.
And by the way, the other book, Evangelpreneur: How the Biblical Teachings on Free Enterprise Empower Faith, Family, and Freedom. Listen, these are all topics that have to appeal to conservatives. Conservatives always tend to want to chart out their own destiny, right? So they already have that built-in can-do, independent spirit that is really necessary to make it on your own in business, right?
Absolutely, and it's surprising, as we march through time, we see more and more conservatives actually getting away from that, and in reality, free enterprise has always been and will always be the fuel for freedom. It was the bedrock of the nation we're in today.
I come from a family, Josh, of self-starters. I'm an attorney by trade, and while I do work for a firm, you don't get anywhere unless you get out there yourself and you drum up your own business and you get your own name out there, and it kind of, builds you for success within, your community of attorneys, at least in my field. But do you feel like the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well, or do we need to really threaten people to quit your job or you're going to end up dying unhappy?
I would love to say it's alive and well, but it really isn't. So really we have two camps right now. From a political standpoint, you have the Democrats and Republicans always promising more jobs. Notice how they never say, I'm promising more small business. It's always which side can provide more jobs. Beyond that, we really don't teach entrepreneurship anymore. A lot of people have the drive and the desire, but we don't teach it. I have a textbook on my desk from 1929. It's a 7th grade math textbook. The first chapter is starting your business. And then it talks about distribution and shipping. And we used to teach kids when they were 12 years old, the default career is to leave school and go become an entrepreneur, unless you're the dunce in the corner. Now, a 7th grade textbook is hundreds of pages of repetition, and the plan is go to school, get good grades, go to college, get more good grades, get a job. Well, that doesn't work in mass, and it certainly doesn't work for the American economy, because no economic model is sustainable if it's based on employment more than 3 generations. It gets gobbled up by inflation.
And isn't it funny how the loss of that teachings also coincides with the loss of learning civics and learning about, your local community and local government and building a civic responsibility, a conscience for your neighborhood and having pride in that as well. The loss of the two together have to really, to me, created a void in this generation that is very hard to fill, and probably the reason why we have so many entitled youth.
Oh, absolutely, and it's why we have so little engagement, too. I mean, we love to blame the liberal left, or we love to blame, the global elite, or what have you. But here's the reality. In my county recently, we passed building codes that make it illegal to build a fence in your yard more than 24 inches high. No joke. Well, the only people who showed up to protest that, and I live in St. Louis metro area, 3.5 million people, there were 7 people who showed up to protest, and they were all entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is this amazing device where you don't have to win people to your side politically based on your argument. They just naturally go there. People ask me all the time, how did you get the political views you hold? I said I became a business owner, and 4 minutes later I realized I was also a conservative. Because as soon as you have skin in the game, now all of these decisions matter to you, whether it's water use rights or building permits or street allocation. When you're getting paid $30 an hour, none of that matters to you, as long as you still have $30 an hour to get a paycheck on Friday. So lack of engagement goes up as entrepreneurship goes down.
Couple of points on that as well. There's this idea of fear of loss that is out there in my generation and generations that have, gone beyond mine. I think that we were teaching kids that stability doesn't come from taking risks, and starting your own business is taking risks. I also think the second point is that in addition to a fear of loss, there is a loss of natural curiosity out there. No one is willing to ask how things happen, why they happen, how things work, how I can make them better. And I think the combination of those two, becoming more fearful and less curious, has really hampered development of future generations. Tell me what you think about those 2 points.
I think you are absolutely right. And what's really sad is the truth behind that fear. You know, fear is one of those things that is rarely true. And we love to think that employment offers stability and security, but it's actually the opposite. We have more, for example, I happen to be standing in the Museum of Biblical History. We have more Christians every year declaring bankruptcy than graduating college. We have 98% of the employment workforce not saving anything for retirement. So where is the stability that we were taught in employment as? The only thing you're guaranteed with employment is either you'll die before you leave your job, you'll retire and have a pension that never keeps up with the 10% you need every year in order to maintain zero growth, or they're going to fire you. That's the only 3 options, and none of those 3 are what I would call stability. Yet in entrepreneurship, people love to say, well, you know, only 20% of businesses fail. Great, then I'm already 18 points ahead, even in my worst case scenario, than the best case scenario of employment.
Absolutely right. Take it a step further now, and you look at other countries, and we're going to get into a discussion about, you know, trade wars and things like that. We'll take it a little more macro, and we're dealing with, you know, micro issues right now. But in taking a little more macro, in other countries that had been lagging behind in development from America, there was a point where it was like, well, we can't do anything else that'll make it worse. So it's only up from here. They don't have that fear of loss there that, you know, maybe generations that grew up entitled and had things and had stuff from past generations who had developed businesses. They don't want to lose what they have, but they don't want to take the step to gain what they have. Other countries have nowhere to go but up, and they're taking that risk, and as a result, some of them have moved ahead of America.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you look back at the history of America, too, it's kind of where they were. They had that curiosity, that self-drive. I mean, if you adjust for inflation, Benjamin Franklin was a billionaire. He's America's first billionaire. So why was he willing to risk it all? What was the cause? What was the purpose? And it was entrepreneurship. We love to teach our kids in 8th grade, you know, well, it was freedom of religion. Nope, that's not true. Otherwise, the Danbury Baptists wouldn't have wrote the letter to Thomas Jefferson in the first place. Oh, well, it was taxation without representation. Nope, that's not true either. We didn't have income tax until 1913. So what were they taxing without representation? Business ownership. Because the king said, nobody owns their own business, I own it, which is why the flag for the contingent out of Maine had a tree on it, because the king said, no, you don't understand, those trees are mine. And the people said, no, it doesn't matter how much wealth we have, how much security we have, if we don't have entrepreneurship, we don't have anything. So we've lost that, which is why I love it when hosts like yourself bring up this topic.
Well, and it really is not talked about enough. We're so wrapped up in political nonsense and palace intrigue, and we're so wrapped up in, you know, in investigations that are going nowhere for 18 months that we really have lost. We've lost the talking point almost. You know, which is why I'm glad I'm glad we have you on the show, Josh. By the way, again, the book's names are Quit Your Job or Die. That's a great one out there. And then Evangelpreneur, How the Biblical Teachings of Free Enterprise Empower Faith, Family, and Freedom. We haven't really talked about how there's a leap of faith in starting a business that is maybe rooted in having faith at a young age. And could that be another contributing factor that we haven't really touched on?
Oh, I think it's a huge contributing factor, especially when it comes to conservatives. A lot of conservatives happen to be believers, and we love to believe that God's with you in all things. Well, no, not business startups, though, Josh. Everything but business startups, that I'm fearful about. And I think a lot of that comes from we really don't teach entrepreneurship, so it is so scary for most people. They think business ownership takes more hours per week, which it doesn't have to. They think it takes money to start, which again, it doesn't have to. They think that it's risky. We already proved how that's not true. So I think a lot of it is just educating people to say, hey, you know what? You can do this. And entrepreneurship is actually the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're from Yale or jail. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, disabled. It makes no bearing, makes no difference. As a matter of fact, the first female millionaire in this country was a black woman in the 1800s, which, of course, the progressive side never even wants to talk about. But when you look at how that happened, she was an entrepreneur who sold